Hi there. Welcome to the CineFiles. I'm Eric Cohen, producer and co-host of the CineFiles. To my left is Andre Joseph, our co-host. And our other co-host, Mr. Jeff Galshaw, also producer and host of Unfinished Business. This is the first time we shot an episode in a while. We took a long break, but we're hoping to make up for it today. Some of us are still a little sniffly. We've been getting over flus, colds. We also had what was supposed to be the worst blizzard of Manhattan, but it was downgraded just a winter storm, so it wasn't that bad, but it was still pretty messy. Look at that subway. Yeah, look at that garbage. Today's topic is an interesting topic. It's hard to clearly define what it is we want to talk about. We're calling it love-hate. But to elaborate on that title, we're going to be discussing films that objectively, and by all reason, we should define as not good movies, or we shouldn't like them for whatever reason, and yet at the same time we might have a slightly unhealthy fascination with them. Jeff, do you have a film? Now keep in mind, we don't know what films we're going to talk about yet. This is the first time we're going to hear these. So someone might bring up a film that some of us might really love, and then maybe we'll have to get into debate as to why that person feels like they shouldn't like the film when they do, or whatever. But anyways, Jeff, do you have a film for us? What was your film that you selected?
The film I actually selected was a little Zach Braff ditty named Garden State.
Okay.
I know there's a certain audience out there who like to think this film defined their generation, or just really like the film because maybe when it came out they were stuck in that same kind of period. But I mean, as you really sit there and watch it, I'm not going to say it's a horrible film through and through, but it's pretty bad and pretty obvious where it's going. I mean, sitting there watching it, it's obvious also that this is a star-making vehicle for him because he was on a television show and he wanted to break into movies, so he wrote something for himself to direct. And, you know, he plays this kind of, I guess, everyman but unemotional everyman, who then his life gets, turned around because he kind of falls in love with this unconventional girl who listens to the Shins and, you know, does all these little weird things. And it's the film that actually started critic Nathan Rabin defining like a character like Natalie Portman as the manic pixie dream girl, which is like every guy's dream girl who's a little weird and has her own problems, but she kind of wants to be saved, but she's really into saving the hero of the tale. And this film, I mean, when I first saw it, I thought it was okay. But over the years, I've watched it over and over again, and despite all the kind of actor cameos, it's just such a obvious, like, it's meant to make you feel something for anybody in the audience. You have somebody or something to identify with. And it just seems like it just keeps going on and on. Like, if it hasn't got you now, got you now. Oh, you escaped me now? Oh, gotcha. It's like a football player when you're running around in that court. I don't know football. So the other player chasing you with the ball, and you're like, okay, Dutch, you missed you. But eventually it catches you. And I will admit, I've always, before this film, always had a cinematic crush on Natalie Portman. But this one, like, pushed her over the top where this movie made me practically fall in love with her. And I think, you know, it's got nice camera work. It has great visuals. But I just feel like it's just so cloying at times. But I will admit, I do watch it every now and again, usually when it's home. And unfortunately, I own the DVD also.
It's funny, the way you feel about Garden State is the way I feel about 500 Days of Summer.
Oh my God, I love 100 Days of Summer.
I feel the same. I find that film to be... It's like it's a film made by a guy who's tone deaf to the fact that his hero is not sympathetic at all. His hero is actually kind of a douchebag. That's the way I feel about that film.
Jeez,
I feel like this guy needs to let it go. Like halfway through the film, it's like, dude, you gotta let this go. It's not working. And if you look back at how everything's structured, it's like the Gordon-Levitt character. You're bringing this onto yourself, and you put this woman on a pedestal. She doesn't want you. She made it very clear. Let it go. Garden State, I think it's okay. I think it's all right. I never was a big Garden State fan. You know, I can understand why people like it. I can also understand why people don't like it. You know, it's kind of one of those. It's one of those films that not only introduced the manic pixie girl conceit thing, but it also kind of like brought the phrase hipster cinema a little bit
I can
to
see
our
that.
lips. You know, this is just before Ty West and all those guys, you know, mumblecore. It's okay. I mean, I could sit through it. I'm entertained by it. I don't feel guilty watching it.
I always do.
But do I think it's a great film? No. I don't know if it's film. Now, are you saying that this is a film that you hate, but you still keep going back to for some reason?
Yes.
What is it about it then that keeps if you hate it, then why do you keep going back to it?
That's the whole thing. I don't know if it's maybe the melancholy mood of the film, but then the little quirky brightness now and again to bring it down. Maybe it's just I just really like Natalie Portman.
So are there aspects of the film that resonate with you in a way where it's like, okay, I hate this film, but there's this one scene or this one element where it's like, but I keep thinking about that.
I mean, I think I like the lead character's relationships when it gets dark with the characters, like when he's talking about his mother's death, when he's trying to, I guess, talk to his father about his feelings, but his father kind of, even though he's a psychiatrist, kind of puts him off. And I guess I also like the relation of, like, okay, he comes and talks to his old friends, and they're still his friends, but they're not as close. There's not that relationship there anymore, except for with Peter Sarsgaard's character. And I don't know, I find that fascinating. Like, one scene in particular that always stands out to me in the film is when he's, I guess, high and caught speeding, and the cop pulls him over, and it's an old high school friend, and, you know, he's, like, so excited to see him, and he's like, well, the last time I saw you, you were doing cocaine off a toilet seat in high school.
I've only seen Garden State one time, and I see the appeal of it with the soundtrack and Zach Braff's direction. You know, very Graduate-esque
Exactly.
for the 2000s. I wasn't a fan. I mean, I just found it very pretentious, and you know, I just couldn't relate to it that well. But I don't think I think he's talented. I wasn't crazy about the film.
But you don't share Jeff's unhealthy obsession with it, regardless of the fact.
I don't share his passion for it. I would have to say.
I have a passion that I don't
His
want to like it.
anti-passion?
Yes, I don't want to like it.
Andre, give us your selection, please.
I'm interested.
This is
man.
fun, and I'm sipping from a Tigger cup,
Well-
which is very manly.
Well, I had fun just trying to create a whole list of films I could think of for this topic, but I'll just go with the one that stands out the most. I think it's the biggest flop in history, The Last Action Hero.
Okay,
Oh,
that's actually an interesting choice.
interesting.
You know,
Yes.
it's like when I saw the film in the theaters in '93, I remember enjoying it, you know, because I'm a big Arnold Schwarzenegger fan. A lot of action, a lot of excitement. Thought it was going to be like another Terminator type of deal. I wasn't expecting it to be more of a fantasy family movie for the most part, you know, just with, you know, most of the focus on Austin O'Brien's character, Danny, going into the film world and, you know, kind of like getting caught up in Arnold's adventure and then bringing him into the real world and just all hell breaking loose. I didn't realize it was a flop until like much later in that year, and that it was like the worst film ever created by man. But for some reason, when it's on TV, I have a tendency to watch it. You know, I think it's just, it's funny. It's Arnold pretty much, you know, doing his best action role, but also at the same time, you know, combining the kind of humor he had with Twins and Kindergarten Cop. And it's quotable, too. So it's like one of those movies that I know it's terrible, but for some reason, I'll sit there and I watch it if it's on TV.
It's funny. I kind of agree with you. The thing is, I saw Last Action. I rewatched it recently, only because I was listening to a podcast where somebody was like staunchly defending The Last Action Hero being an underrated film. I don't agree with that person having rewatched it. But it's objectively, you look at it, it's not a good film for many reasons. It has a great conceit behind it. But I think for me, the number one issue with that film is the freaking kid.
Yes.
Is ridiculously annoying.
Yeah.
Just really, really annoying. The second problem with that film I have is that the reality isn't really a reality. It's still a film reality.
Yeah.
There's not enough contrast between the kid's reality versus Arnold Schwarzenegger's character, movie franchise character's reality. I'm infamous for being a nitpicker.
Oh, Lord. Here we go.
Now we get to nitpicky problems I have with Last Action Hero.
Let's start.
The world this action hero lives in, it doesn't make logical sense that other characters from other movies would exist in that world as well.
Thank you.
yeah, sure.
It doesn't make
Stone.
any sense. Yeah, it's one of those films that you watch when you're like really hungover after a night out with your friends, where you just want to veg in the couch and watch TV. It shows up on a Saturday afternoon. I agree. Objectively, it's not a good film. There's a lot wrong with it. I mean, it's well shot.
John McTiernan did a good job.
Right. It's well edited. John McTiernan. It's a John McTiernan film. He has that certain style. Schwarzenegger's solid in it.
Yeah, Charles Dance is the villain. I think he was the bright spot of the whole thing.
Yeah, Charles Dance is the villain. The whole thing with his like glass eye, it's just a different eye every single time he shows up. That's kind of amusing.
That was my first introduction
kind
to
of
Charles
amusing.
Dance in a film.
I agree with you on that. I think that's an interesting choice. Yeah, Jeff, any thoughts on that? Last Action Hero.
I find it a guilty pleasure more than anything because I unfortunately saw it twice in theaters because I just really enjoyed it the first time I saw it, and I wasn't disappointed the second time. But over the years, I have seen it, and the kid is very annoying. I like certain aspects of it, but I have to disagree when you said it's like one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's best performances. I actually think it's one of his worst performances ever. Maybe it's because, he's trying to do so much and play all these different characters.
To be or not to be. Not to be.
It's just like, I just didn't find any of his acting ever believable. I thought it was, like I said, I just felt like he was struggling and just saying the lines half the time. And really, I'll say the one scene that I don't know why it's funny to me, but is the spoof shot from Die Hard of him falling. He's holding onto the railing. I don't know why. I find that hilarious, but I mean, I read all the stories about the production, the pre-production, how the film was originally supposed to be and how it's changed before, they got a hold of it and started rewriting.
Shane Black wrote the script. It was a spec script.
Yeah, it was a spec script.
It was a spoof of action films. Basically.
Yeah, but then what Zach Penn and his writing partner got a hold of it. Because the whole thing was the whole main theme of the film was to stop living your life through movies and go out there and live a real life.
Right.
And just watch films as entertainment. But then along the way, the message got screwed up and they just wanted to make it straight spoof.
I find it's a film that's, and this is where it kind of goes against what the goal was with this topic. I find it a hard film to hate.
Yes.
Yeah.
I acknowledge it's stupid.
Oh, yes.
It's a stupid movie, but I can't hate it. It has a certain charm, whatever. Whereas I have a film
Oh, Lord.
that objectively should be considered a terrible fucking movie. Low budget, incompetently made, the whole 9 yards, but I cannot stop thinking about aspects of this film. And this may even be a film that you've not even heard of, although some diehard horror fans may have heard of this film, but I guarantee you guys have not heard of this film, okay? And that film is called Screams of a Winter Night. Have you heard of this film?
No.
It's a bit of a notorious low budget. It's almost like a home movie. It's made in 1979. The whole film was financed by the guy who directed it. I think his name was James Wilson, James L. Wilson, maybe. It's an anthology horror film. And basically, it's a bunch of kids hanging out in a cabin in the woods. They decide to tell each other campfire stories, that kind of thing. And each story they tell becomes one of the stories in this anthology thing. Very low budget, cheap in that late 1970s way, bad lighting, the whole 9 yards. It is objectively, the stories are just dumb. They're like stories a 6-year-old could just make up, when they're trying to like spook their friends at a sleepover. There's no real great twist or anything. But, there's a big but, there are aspects to this film that are genuinely unnerving. And that's where I can't wrap my head around. I can't, this is a shitty film. This is a shitty film. Then something happens where like, okay, why was I unnerved by that? Why was that genuinely spooky? For example, the film starts off spectacularly. And what I mean is, it's a genius of economy. In that the entire title sequence, the titles, who stars in it, whatever, it's just, you just see the titles, everything else is black, but all you hear is like a voiceover. You hear a bunch of people hanging out at something, right? And you hear like the winds pick up. And many people hear a certain person going, oh my God, no, what the hell is that? And then something is attacking them, and you hear screams, blood-curdling screams, and all this is going on during the title sequence. It works. It's actually the scariest part of the entire film. And it's actually very, very well done. And I'm willing to wager that the director behind this film had no idea it was good. That anything that works in this film is purely accidental. Having said that, there's other scenes in this film where it's like, okay, I'm going to explain a scene to you. This is a spoiler. But you can't really spoil this film because one of the stories involves these couple of guy friends that decide to hang out in what is ostensibly a haunted house, right?
Yeah.
And it has a really dumb ending. It's like there's three of them, one disappears, and another one disappears, so there's only one guy left, and it ends with them going, "Where are you? Where are you?" He goes into this room, and he opens up this room. It's almost like a Blair Witch moment, like at the end of Blair Witch, we've all seen it, I'm not spoiling anything, where she winds up down in the basement, she sees her friend facing the corner, right, and she gets, whatever. It's meant to be unnerving in a similar way, but it isn't. It shouldn't be, because this is what the friend sees. He sees one of the friends who had previously disappeared, just dancing underneath a red light. Or green light. I think it's actually green light. Just doing this. Right, that's it. And that's the end. And the remaining kid's going, and this door slowly closes on him. He tries to stop the door from closing on him, and the door closes on him. That's the end of the story, right? Does that sound ridiculous?
Yes.
Does it sound stupid? Okay, it is. However, for some reason, it's unnerving when you see it in this film. When they actually do it, it's like this thing. It's like, this is stupid. This should not be scary. It should not be. But why is this unnerving? It's weird, but it's unnerving. And there's a lot of these moments in this film where it's like, you just can't explain why they're working. So that was my pick, Screams of a Winter Night. I don't know if my review of it makes you want to run out and see it. But look it up, Google it. And then, there's plenty of stuff out there on this film, and then decide whether or not you want to check it out. You can watch it on YouTube. I think it's actually, you can view it on YouTube. But it's fascinating. In fact, it's better if you view it on YouTube because you can fast forward through some of the worst bits and just you'll see what I'm talking about. Some of this stuff, this film is terrible, but there's stuff in there where you're just like, what the hell? That's creepy. Can you think of any films though? Speaking of which, can you think of any films like I mentioned that might be like films that no one might have heard of, that only you've heard of, and that you're maybe embarrassed to admit that you've seen, or
It better not be Hudson Hawk.
No, not Hudson Hawk. But I mean, there's.
I like Hudson Hawk.
So do I.
No, but there's
I like Hudson Hawk.
a number of movies I'm trying to think of right now, but one that I don't think a lot of people know about. There are a lot of like those '80s blaxploitation movies that Fred Williamson was doing in Italy with Italian financiers. And there was this one I remember seeing called Soda Cracker, a.k.a. The Kill Reflex.
Huh.
This one came out around '89. It was him and Maud Adams from the Bond film.
Could this be more obscure than Screams of a Winter Night?
I think so.
I think so, because this was on the Encore channel like when I was in high school. And I was just so amazed by it because he shot Chicago so well in the film. You have Bo Stevenson playing like a drug dealer that he's chasing after. And then you have the late, great Phyllis Hyman playing a role as like a drug-addicted singer that apparently Williamson's character has like this past relationship with. And it's just painfully bad, like these long-ass takes of, Fred Williamson in his car driving, get the synthesizer music, then cutting to Maud Adams being chased by Bo Stevenson in a farm, then cutting back to Fred Williamson in his car with the synthesizer music. It's just painfully bad and so padded out, but yet I think that cast makes it so appealing, and it's just a weird, guilty pleasure to have.
Have you heard of Street People?
Who was it? Street
There's a film called Street People. It was an Italian crime, Euro crime movie starring Roger Moore and Stacy Keach.
Oh my God, not Stacey.
And oh yeah, it's a buddy movie. But it's kind of a repugnant movie because you're not quite. Basically, the whole goal of these two guys, Stacy Keach and Roger Moore, is completely immoral. But they're supposed to be the heroes. The idea is that Roger Moore is supposed to be a son of the mafia. So we're supposed to believe that Roger Moore was a Sicilian. But to explain his like urbaneness and all that stuff, he was raised in like he was sent to like British boarding schools and stuff like that. But for some reason, he winds up in San Francisco being a lawyer for the mob, right? Because it's the mob that raised him and all that stuff. and there's this somebody. The whole premise is somebody is out to get the mob, or it's a power struggle where they're trying to like steal like heroin that was coming in for one guy, and they're trying to make it look like it was actually someone else doing it by trying to kill key members of this mob. Meanwhile, Roger Moore is not only it's really confusing people. He's not only a lawyer for the mob, but he has this little side business going on with Stacy Keach, where he's keeping tabs on what's going on with all these guys, and he tries to figure out, can I take advantage of this in a money way? So then he'll like secretly go to like the guy who's like the capo, the head of all the mobs, right? And says, hey, hire me and I'll find out who's actually trying to destroy everybody. And it's like, okay, we'll hire you to do this so you can make a little extra money. Why he wouldn't need to do that? Outside of being the lawyer for the mob, I think he's being paid well enough. I have no idea. So the rest of the film is him and Stacy Keach trying to find out who's behind all these assassinations and who's trying to set up whom, while trying to like profit off of it themselves. And then at some point, it's like, no, it's not really about that. No, they're just trying to get their hands on the heroin so that they can make money off the heroin. So they're actually pitting themselves against the mob. No, that's not actually what's happening. No, it doesn't make any sense, folks. But if you want to see Roger Moore in a sort of an exploitation kind of like scenario, it's one of those films where it's like, you know what, this film it sucks. It's just bad. It doesn't make any sense. But you can't help but like watch it with this like weird kind of like schadenfreude like fascination watching Stacy Keach and Roger Moore act with each other in this weird thing. You never thought you'd ever see them together in a movie, and you probably never will after this. But it is fascinating to watch because of that aspect of it.
I didn't really do research into this film, but it was a action film from the late 80s or early 90s, starring, of all people, Steve Railsback, where he's an ex-army, I believe, soldier, but this town needs to get rid of the wrong element, so they only have enough money to hire Steve Railsback to clean up this town. And the movie's just horrible through and through because every woman who sees him can't help themselves from throwing themselves at him. He's a drunk, but the whole thing that makes this movie worth it is Steve Railsback's performance, but I cannot remember the name of the film. It was one of those HBO Friday night action movies that used to come out, but I could not find the name of it. I even looked through his resume. I still can't remember the name of the film because he's the only cast member I really remember being in it. That's how bad the film was.
Well, shall we find out?
If you want to.
You continue discussing, like, well, what is it about this film that...
It's just Steve Railsback lead performance because it's comedic, but he does make a believable action hero throughout this film. Even though, I don't even remember the villain or the enemy he had to face.
You wanted to mention a film, The Girlfriend Experience.
Yes.
Now, why? That's an interesting choice. Personally, for me, Girlfriend Experience is an interesting experiment, but it's pretty unmemorable. But it's not a film I would hate.
Well, I mean, I think particularly to me why I find it interesting, Sasha Grey. Because I feel like, sort of like when Jean-Luc Godard would make his films with his wife and how he showed her in all these aspects. And it was almost like the camera loved her so much and it showed every aspect of her. And she's just so fascinating. It's the same thing with The Girlfriend Experience. I find the character fascinating. I find the actress fascinating. I don't like anything else about the movie. I don't think the storyline's all that compelling. I know it's supposed to be showing the financial meltdown, but anytime it switches off of her character to her boyfriend and the guys he hangs around with, I don't really care. But any scene she's in, I can stay totally riveted in. And I thought it was an interest because I thought originally it was just going to maybe show a prostitute's life, the ins and outs of her life, or an escort. And, if it would have stayed with that premise, I thought it would have been a much more interesting film. But I could see why maybe when he made the film, he was like, well, I don't want them just thinking, I'm going to take a porn actress and make her play a prostitute. And, people will feel like this is almost like a porn film without the sex. And even though I hate this film, I keep finding myself watching the film and writing a never-ending review. One is on, actually, the CineFiles blog. But if you notice, every month or two, I add more to the review. Because I have so many ideas and so much to say about it, but I can acknowledge I don't think it's a good film.
I think the thing that's interesting about Girlfriend Experience for me is I think it's a flawed experiment. I say it's a flawed experiment. It doesn't quite work, although I see why Soderbergh was trying something. What that was, I have no idea, but I could see he was trying something. I'd say that my biggest issue with the film is that you guys know me, I'm a big foodie. I love like food, I like good restaurants, stuff like that. If you're distracted by all the restaurants she goes to, because like the whole film is like her going to like some of my favorite restaurants in New York City, but that's a distraction instead of being a plus, then you know there's something wrong with your movie. And that's my feeling about Girlfriend Experience.
Okay.
Because it's like, okay, I love that restaurant, but why do I need to know she's there? Shall we wind up?
Unless you want to talk about Joe Dirt.
Joe Dirt?
No.
Oh, you have it. You're fat. You like Joe Dirt.
I like Joe Dirt. I don't know why.
Interesting. You know, a lot of people do like Joe Dirt, actually.
And the thing is, I don't usually like David Spade films, but for some odd reason, Joe Dirt, I like.
My girlfriend likes Joe Dirt.
I'm not gonna say it's a good film, but maybe it's just like the cameos are funny. David Spade's actually funny. He's actually sympathetic.
So you're looking
once.
forward to the sequel?
Yes, I put that on the CineFiles Facebook page.
But I want you to vocalize that in front of the camera.
Okay,
So now it's recorded
I
for
want
posterity.
to see Joe Dirt too. I will probably see it in theaters.
We lost a lot of viewers now.
And on that note,
Argue with you.
I think we can close out on Joe Dirt. Thank you for watching this episode of the CineFiles. Hate, love, love, hate. Films that we are repulsed by but can't get out of our heads. Jeff Galashaw of Unfinished Business, co-host of the CineFiles, Andre Joseph, also of AJ Epics, EPYX. Look up his blog. Look us all up on Twitter. We also have a new podcast we started. And so go to iTunes, rate us, comment us, download us. You can do it there, or you just like listen to us off of our home, thisisinfamous.com. Check out the other stuff that's going on at This Is Infamous. There's other podcasts as well by other people, of great content being contributed to that site. Some of us are also contributing our own writings to the site as well, not just CineFiles content. And like us on Facebook. Join our Facebook group and join the discussions that are CineFiles-like discussions. And that's basically it. We'll see you next time. We'll see you when we see you. And I have a love-hate relationship with you. I love you, but you repulse me, and vice versa. Bye.